right, so my man Garry Vee, notorious entrepreneur, he created a little montage video called Are Entrepreneurs Born or Made? And I'm going to listen to what he has to say. I haven't actually watched this yet and try to add some of my own wisdom into that, because I think that my view of it and his are probably going to be different.
Let's start with this. I fully 100,000% with no hedge do not believe that you can teach entrepreneurship. In entrepreneurship, everybody in America, everybody watching this right now, it's the American thing to believe. People don't think of entrepreneurship as a skill.
Right.
They don't think they can be LeBron or be, 9 Inch Nails or be 50 Cent. But everybody looks at me and says, I can do that.
Yeah.
They don't understand that it's a talent. You may have entrepreneurial tendencies. You may have aspiration to be an entrepreneur. It's more practical to actually recognize I'm a talent, and let's say they think I'm 100, I'm the best.
Yeah.
Them being a 68 is actually quite financially and happiness worthy, whereas if you look at LeBron and he's 100.
All right, I'll stop because he contradicted himself immediately. He said people don't think of entrepreneurship as a skill. That in itself says it's something that can be learned. Garry Vee is probably a purebred entrepreneur in the sense that he has like natural gifts and talents, but the truth is I wasn't a naturally, purebred born entrepreneur, but I was very good at taking intangible and ethereal things and turning them into frameworks and models that I could then use. For example, if you ask Garry Vee what makes business hum, he's going to tell you some intangible stuff like, oh, you got to hustle 24/7 or something like that. To me, I think about it in terms of businesses made up of 8 core concepts. You have leadership, finance, growth, operations, product, service, sales, and marketing. And each of those has specific functions in the business. And how you orchestrate those together is ultimately what makes a business work. Being able to have entrepreneurial ideas or entrepreneurial vision, sure, that's the difference between those that are successful and those that aren't. But I don't think you can 100% with no hedge, like he says, just say that entrepreneurs can't be built. They're just purely born.
Like you'll spend a lot of time in rec leagues and there's a different thing, right? Crush it is, Stefan, don't work for me. Go home and make $10,000 to $15,000 a year more chopping up basketball content because you love it so much. If you think that that's the thing you want in your life. The thing that most people realize, which is true, which is like, yeah, cool, but I could, make $150,000 this way, and it just. I think everybody lies to themselves. You have to audit who you actually are. It costs you money to try to be a 68 musician. You paid $15,000 demo, you have overhead, like you can't pay rent. Yeah. This thing, being a 60, even for the people that are clearly understand that they're not me, talent-wise, it's actually quite practical to be a 68.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think what he's trying to get at is that there are certain intangible qualities that entrepreneurs have. Generally, they're humble, hungry, smart, gritty, competitive, and they have extreme personal accountability. They're resourceful, they're comfortable with risk. If those things give you anxiety or make you uncomfortable, then yeah, you're probably not ready for entrepreneurship. But in terms of the skill of like business acumen, entrepreneurial acumen, that's something that can be taught. And I've always said that knowledge plus experience equals confidence. And in the absence of experience, you need to understand the attitudes, the skills, and the habits of entrepreneurs. And so at a certain point, you just got to get out there and do it. And that's how you become an entrepreneur. But I will definitely say that probably, 90% of the population is just not born that way. It's something that you learn over time. This is actually another reaction video in around the same topic, right? Are entrepreneurs born or made? You got to love YouTube. People have clearly been doing their keyword research about are entrepreneurs born or made? And I think it's a hot topic, right? If you're here, you're watching this, you probably want to know the same thing. Is do I have what it takes in order to be successful? So here goes.
Hi, I'm Tilman Feritta, owner of the Golden Nugget Casinos, Landry's Restaurants, everything from Mastro's to Bubba Gump to Del Frisco's to Catch to Rainforest, Saltgrass, Chart House, and a lot more, and the owner of the Golden Nugget Casinos and the Houston Rockets. And I'm here to talk to you about my new book, Shut Up and Listen, with Brian Elliott behind the brand.
Did you have encouragement from your family, like other entrepreneurs in your family, or do they want you to go down a certain path?
It's amazing, but everybody, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in my family, so it's definitely in the DNA, and not every of course, nobody's become as successful as I have. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs.
All right, so I'll say that's kind of number one. Obviously, you are a byproduct of who you surround yourself with. So if you come from a family that has lots of entrepreneurs, you're probably going to be more entrepreneurial. Me, myself, I didn't really have that. My dad was like a sole proprietor, a carpenter. He never quite broke out to having his own like business. He worked for himself, but he didn't have his own business. So entrepreneurship wasn't something I was very keen on. But as I got older, my circles changed and I started hanging around with more people and friends whose parents were entrepreneurs. My whole worldview started to change.
And I do think that you are born with the entrepreneurial gene, but that doesn't mean that you can't go out and say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and be successful. But remember, you can be just as successful going up the corporate ladder.
So he said something pretty important, that you can't go out there and you could be an entrepreneur, but you're not necessarily going to go out there and be successful. So first thing, I think that's just a mindset. Like being afraid to fail in entrepreneurship is probably the number one limiting thing that keeps people from being successful. Don't be afraid to blow yourself up. Don't be afraid to fail. Because in fact, most entrepreneurs spend like 6 to 7 years banging their head against the wall in their first business. And they actually have their most success when they come around and do business number 2, or they get past those first, 6 to 7 years on their first stint. They stick with that business and it becomes successful long term. So I think if you're playing to not lose, then you're probably going to lose.
Don't feel like you just have to be an entrepreneur. There's many millionaires and even a few billionaires who work for somebody else.
There's a lot there that I want to unpack, but let's go back to the assertion that entrepreneurs are born and they're not made. What makes you say that?
I just knew how to make money. Just like a singer is born a singer, a person who can play an instrument is born with a music ear. An athlete, a lot of times, is as much as you want to play professional football, basketball, or baseball, you can't make yourself that good. You have to be born with the talent. And I do think that I do have an entrepreneurial gene, but at the same time, I became a sponge and grabbed it to make myself much better.
So they always say the same thing. You're born with it. You're born with it. Like, okay, sure, but there's plenty of athletes who weren't known for being the greatest athlete. I mean, myself included. I'm 5'10" ¾ 220 pounds. I ended up playing at a D1 football school, right? Like, okay, for all intents and purposes, I should have been over 6 foot. I should have been bigger, taller, stronger, faster to play linebacker, but I wasn't. I made it because I had something that a lot of people don't have, which is grit. And so another good example of a guy who I followed is Pat Tilman. He was a great football player, ended up going to the NFL, and he made a decision to leave the NFL and go to the military. But the guy did the work in order to be there. So there's a big difference between like innately wired that way because of how you grew up or what you come to know. But I don't entirely agree with either you're this way or you're not that way.
I think there's a large debate on nurture and nature, right? It's the environment that you grow up in can have a huge influence on you. At the same time, I have kids, and I 100% can see certain things are DNA. It was built in, and they're different from me, and you can definitely see those differences.
I just want to touch on that because it's actually a great thing. Once upon a time, I read a book called The Sports Gene, and it was this whole concept of nature versus nurture. And to kind of give you the gist is, would Michael Phelps be Michael Phelps if he never found swimming, right? And so Michael Phelps is an incredibly gifted swimmer because a lot of his mechanics and levers are designed for him to be a great swimmer. But would Michael Phelps have been a great powerlifter? Probably not. So sometimes it's just a matter of finding your knack, your lane, getting enough experience into a given industry before you're actually, qualified or skilled enough to go and break out into that thing. So I think that, just because you did one business and maybe it failed or it wasn't a huge success doesn't mean you're not an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs just are more focused on the ability to get freedom, control over their time, their money, their relationships, and the purpose of what they're doing. They're really like creators or artists, and that's how we view it, right? For me, strategy is very fulfilling, like a painter would paint or a musician would make music.
But let's go back to maybe identifying, because a lot of people talk about self-awareness being a really important thing, and I agree. Being able to understand yourself. And maybe there's a lot of people, and I don't think it's age specific, that are still trying to figure out, what am I good at? Or what is in my DNA? So how do we help those people identify those gifts that they've been given? If it's James Harden, certainly that DNA helped him get to the NBA, no question about it. And then he perfected. But what are some of the the signals that we can look for?
Well, and I talk about this in the book, is that God gave us all a gift, but you got to find out what you're good at, because he did make us all special in our own way. Everybody has something that they're better at than everybody else, or they're better at.
I agree with you.
Okay.
So how do we figure that out?
I think that you have to sit there and look at yourself in the mirror sometime and say, what am I good at?
Okay, that might be the dumbest piece of advice I've ever heard. If you've never tried anything, you don't have enough experiences, like how would you ever be able to know that, right? And I know a guy, his name's Matt. Matt is an incredible guitarist, but if you saw him, he probably should play in the NFL because he's like 6'7", 300 pounds. He could have been an NBA basketball star, but he was drawn to music. So I would definitely say that looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, who am I? If you don't really have any experience, is probably the worst litmus test for whether or not you should be an entrepreneur.
You might be a great poet. You might be a great author. You might be a great athlete, or you might have a great voice, or you might be...
Okay, another dumb piece of advice. Because you have a great voice doesn't mean you should go be a professional musician. Again, this is what you see with really successful people. So one of my giftings is the ability to break down complex, intangible, and ethereal things. And when you meet people who are really successful, sometimes they have a hard time explaining to you why they're successful. You meet somebody who's fast and you ask them why they're fast, they're going to give you a bunch of advice that is irrelevant to them because they've always been fast, right? Or you ask somebody why they're good at sales, they say something stupid like, you got to get them to say yes more, right? And so really successful, naturally talented people, they have a tendency to be really bad coaches and explainers, which is why you see a lot of, like Michael Jordan went on to be like not a great basketball coach. Okay, video number 3. All right, so I'm probably actually most excited about this one. This one looks like it's with Alex Hormozi. And one thing I'll say about Alex Hormozi, he's actually very thoughtful and a critical thinker. He has some, he's eloquent when he talks about things. He's actually thought about them. You can tell from the last couple videos that I watched that people hadn't really thought too much about that, right? They just kind of defaulted to their ego about how dope they are. And that's why they think that makes them successful as an entrepreneur. I haven't watched this yet, but we'll see what Alex has to say.
Do you think entrepreneurs are hardwired, or do you think they can be made? And if so, why?
I think it's a really good question. I think it's a nature nurture thing. So I think that there are some people who are hardcore, could never live another way. And there are some people who will never be entrepreneurs. But I think there's a whole lot of gray in between that depends on stimuli and circumstance. I think for me, I don't think I was hardwired an entrepreneur. I wasn't slinging lemonade. I think if there was like 10 being, you know, the Garry Vee who says he could never be anything but an entrepreneur, and then a 1 is, you know, an academic chair at a department of mechanical engineering. I think I was actually closer to like a 3. Like, I think I'm actually left of middle in terms of not being necessarily an entrepreneur personality type. The only reason that I think I even got into this was because I so disliked the career that I was on that I just wanted candidly, I just wanted the emotional pain to end.
So I agree totally with what Alex is saying. And if you know anything about how he was raised, you know, his dad was very huge on education and, you know, had this idea that you go to school, you get a degree, you work hard, you get a pension, get some retirement. And when Alex actually threw that away to go pursue entrepreneurship, his dad was livid, was less than happy. And I would align more with what Alex says because, you know, I don't recall. For me, we grew up, money was really hard to come by. So I knew that I didn't want to go do what my dad did, which was sling hammers. So I knew there was a better way to use my brain in order to make money. But the concept of money was incredibly foreign to me. And this idea of creating money out of thin air by way of providing value and a service to somebody was something I didn't have. And then I spent 10 years inside of a large marketing and technology company where I got to be an entrepreneur. I got to grow up and I got to learn skills about how to market, how to sell, how to lead teams, how to lead people, how to recruit hundreds of people a year, right? How to build a brand, how to run Google ads and Facebook campaigns and all those kinds of things that you, like I've been saying, you wouldn't experience if you've never had the chance to go and get the skill or learn the skill. And so I think the biggest determining factor is just like how soon you come on to that and what that maturing looks like over time before you decide to take the entrepreneurial leap. The vast majority of companies that get started in the United States are people between the ages of 30 and 40. Why is that? right? It's because they've had some time to mature in their development as an entrepreneur.
And so I just thought like, I didn't even want to be alive anymore. And so I just threw away all my goals around money and just said, I'm going to do something that I love. Even if I don't make anything, I'll start a gym. I like fitness. But then I got the bug and realized I liked business more than I liked fitness. And then that kind of started the next kind of passion that started growing within me. Like the day that I opened my gym was the day that fitness became second most important thing in my life. Business became the most important thing in my life.
So good. Yeah. So I agree 100%. You got to get out there and try it, and you'll never know unless you actually try it. So I think entrepreneurs are matured like fine wine. They get a bunch of experience. They spend 7 to 10 years maybe working in an industry, doing a couple businesses that maybe fall on their face or side hustles and never really mature. And then after they developed all those skills, then they go and execute and they become incredibly successful.